Hannah sat in the very last row of the Advanced Fleet Tactics classroom. She always chose that seat that let her see everything and everyone without being noticed. The chair was too big for a small human frame, made for the much larger alien students who filled the other seats. The Galactic Naval Academy on Nexus Prime was the most famous military school in known space. Students came from hundreds of different worlds to learn here, but Hannah was the only human. She had been the only human for 3 months now. The other students whispered about her when they thought she could not hear. But humans had very good hearing. She heard every word. "Look at the Deathworlder," said a tall blue student with 4 arms. His name was Kalinox, and he came from a peaceful water world. "I heard her planet is so dangerous that even the plants try to kill you. My professor said humans eat other animals," whispered a crystal-like being that sparkled in the light. "Raw meat, like savages. I heard they fight wars for fun," added another student. This one looked like a giant insect with golden wings. "They have something called sports, where they hurt each other on purpose." Hannah kept her face calm and looked straight ahead. She had heard worse things than this, much worse. When she first arrived at the academy, some students refused to sit near her. They said humans smelled like predators. Tess, her eyes looked like a hunter's eyes. They were not wrong about the eyes. Commander Vexstar walked into the classroom. He was a Saurian, which meant he looked like a giant lizard that walked on 2 legs. His scales were dark green, and his yellow eyes could see everything. He was old, smart, and had never lost a battle. "Today we begin your final examination," Commander Vexstar said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "This test will decide if you graduate from this academy. It will decide if you become officers in the Galactic Defense Fleet." The classroom became very quiet. Even the constant humming from the crystal students stopped. "You will face the Harmony Cluster defense scenario," the commander continued. He touched a button and the lights dimmed. Above their heads, a huge display showed a map of space with stars and planets. "This is one of the most difficult tests we have. Many students fail it." Hannah leaned forward slightly. She studied the star map carefully. The Harmony Cluster had 12 planets and 2 space stations. It was home to nearly 50 billion peaceful beings. Most of them had never seen war. "An enemy fleet of 500 ships approaches the cluster," Commander Vexstar explained. Red dots appeared on the map, moving slowly toward the peaceful worlds. "You must defend it. You have 300 ships under your command. The enemy has better weapons and stronger shields." A student raised her hand. She was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow. "Commander, what kind of enemy are we fighting?" "Okay. Unknown aliens from outside our galaxy," Vexstar replied. "They do not respond to peace offers. They do not want to talk. Okay. They only want to destroy everything in their path." Okay. More red dots appeared on the map. The enemy fleet was huge. Hannah counted the ships and ran quick numbers in her head. The defenders were badly outnumbered. Worse, they had to protect civilians who could not fight back. "Each of you will command part of the defense fleet," the commander said. "You will work together, but each section is your responsibility. I will judge how well you plan, how well you adapt, and how well you protect innocent lives." Cadet Morden raised his hand. He was the best student in the class, a crystalline being whose people had never fought a war. His entire species solved problems by talking and sharing thoughts through their crystal bodies. "Commander, when do we present our strategies?" Morden asked. His voice sounded like music, clear and beautiful. "Now," Vexstar said, "starting with you, Cadet Morden." Morden stood up gracefully. His crystal body caught the light from the star map and threw rainbow colors across the walls. "Okay." When he spoke, other crystal students hummed softly in harmony. "I propose the shield wall formation," Morden said. "We arrange our ships in defensive layers around each planet. Our strongest shields protect the weaker ships behind them. When the enemy attacks, we absorb their fire and slowly retreat toward the planets. This gives us time to negotiate and find a peaceful solution. The other students nodded and made approving sounds. It was a smart plan. It would save many lives on both sides. It followed all the rules they had learned about civilized warfare. We use our superior defensive technology, Morden continued. We showed the enemy that attacking us costs too much. Eventually, they will want to talk instead of fight. All intelligent species prefer peace to war. Commander Vexstar made notes on his tablet. Acceptable plan. Cadet Morton. Who is next? Other students presented their ideas. They were all similar to Morden's plan. Defensive formations. Minimum casualties. Technology over tactics. Everyone wanted to fight a clean, honorable battle with rules that both sides would follow. Hannah listened to each presentation. She watched the star map and memorized every detail. Planet positions, supply routes, communication networks, civilian populations. She saw things the other students missed. The enemy fleet was not arranged randomly. Their formation told a story. Their supply ships were in the wrong places. Their communication pattern had weak spots. Most importantly, they were moving exactly like students from this academy would move. That was the real test, Hannah realized. The enemy was not some unknown alien force. Hey, the enemy was a computer program that used standard galactic defense tactics. It fought the way every species in known space had been taught to fight. Every species except humans. Cadet Lee, Hannah, Commander Vexstar, called out, "Your turn." The entire classroom turned to look at her. Dozens of alien eyes studied the small human girl who sat quietly in the back row. Some looked curious, others looked worried. A few looked afraid. Hannah stood up slowly. She was much shorter than the other students. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple tail. Her brown eyes were calm and steady. She looked at the star map for a long moment. "I need more time to study the parameters," she said quietly. Her voice was soft but clear. "May I present my plan tomorrow?" Commander Vexstar frowned. His yellow eyes narrowed. "This is a test of quick thinking, cadet. Real battles do not wait for you to be ready." "I understand, sir," Hannah replied. "But I want to make sure I give the best answer possible." The commander stared at her for several seconds. The classroom was completely silent. Finally, he made a note on his tablet. "Very well. You will present first thing tomorrow morning." Class dismissed. The other students gathered their things and left quickly. Many of them whispered to each other as they walked out. Hannah heard some of their words. The human is scared. She does not understand the complexity. Deathworlders are not smart enough for real strategy. Hannah stayed in her seat until the room was empty. Then she walked down to the front where the star map still glowed above her head. She stood there alone, studying the battle scenario with intense focus. She was not scared. She was not confused. She was hunting. On Earth, her brother Jimin had taught her something important. He was an officer in the Earth Defense Force and had fought in 3 wars. "Hannah," he had said, "when you face an enemy, do not think like they expect you to think. Do not fight the battle they want to fight. Find their weakness and attack it with everything you have. The goal is not to win with honor. The goal is to make sure your people go home alive." Now, standing alone in the empty classroom, Hannah smiled for the first time in weeks. Her classmates thought humans were primitive. They thought Earth people were too savage for civilized warfare. Tomorrow, she would show them what 3 billion years of evolution on a death world had taught her. Species about survival. The real lesson was about to begin. The next morning came too quickly for most students. But Hannah had not slept much anyway. She had spent the night in the academy library, reading everything she could find about the enemy fleet patterns and defensive strategies. The advanced fleet tactics classroom looked different now. Instead of simple desks, each student sat at a command station with multiple screens and controls. These were real ship controls, connected to the Academy's main computer system. When the simulation started, each student would command actual ships with real crews. Well, not exactly real crews. Hey, we're computer programs designed to act like real people, okay? But the ships were real, somewhere in space. 300 vessels waited for orders from students who had never fought a real battle. Commander Vexstar stood at the front of the room. Behind him, the giant star map showed the Harmony cluster in perfect detail. 12 peaceful worlds glowed blue and green. 2 space stations orbited the largest planet. Millions of civilian ships moved between the worlds, carrying families and supplies. Today, you command real ships with real responsibilities, the commander announced. The computer crews will follow your orders exactly. If you make mistakes, ships will be destroyed. If you fail completely, 50 billion innocent people will die. Some students looked nervous. Others seemed excited. Hannah just watched the map and waited. Cadet Morden will have overall command, Vexstar continued. He scored highest on all tactical exams. The rest of you will command smaller groups and follow his orders. Morden stood up and bowed slightly. His crystal body reflected the light from the star map, casting rainbow patterns on the walls. I am honored by this responsibility, he said in his musical voice. Together, we will protect the innocent and show these invaders that civilization is stronger than chaos. The other students made approving sounds. They trusted Morden completely. He had never failed a test. His people, the Crystallins, were famous for their peaceful wisdom and perfect logic. Cadet Lehanna, Commander Vexstar called out, you will command the Outer Patrol Group. 12 ships on the edge of the system. Hannah nodded calmly. She had expected this. The Outer Patrol was the least important position. It was where they put students who might make mistakes. The ships there were old and weak. Everyone expected them to be destroyed quickly when the real fighting started. Your job is simple, Vexstar explained to her. Watch for the enemy. Report what you see. Try to slow them down if possible. But do not take unnecessary risks. I understand, sir, Hannah replied. She looked at her command station. 12 ships appeared on her personal screen. They were old models with weak weapons and thin armor. But they were fast. That might be useful. Simulation begins now, Commander Vexstar announced. The star map came alive. Red dots appeared at the edge of the system, moving slowly toward the date. Peaceful worlds. The enemy fleet was huge. 500 ships in perfect formation, advancing like a wall of death across space. Morden immediately began giving orders. His voice stayed calm and musical as he directed the main defense fleet into position. He created beautiful defensive patterns around each planet. Layers of ships with overlapping shields and weapons coverage. All units maintain formation. Morden commanded, do not break ranks. We will show them the strength of unity and discipline. The other students followed his orders perfectly. Their ships moved into textbook defensive positions, right? It looked exactly like the diagrams in their military strategy books. Clean, organized, and civilized. Hannah moved her patrol ships to the outer edge of the system. On her screen, she could see the enemy fleet approaching. They moved in standard attack formation, just like the Academy had taught them. Same patterns, same tactics, same predictable behavior. She smiled slightly. Her brother Jimin had been right. The enemy was fighting exactly like a Galactic Defense Force officer would fight. That made them predictable, okay? And predictable enemies could be defeated, okay? Patrol group, spread out, she ordered quietly. I want eyes on everything. Watch their supply. Ships, count their communication relays. Look for patterns in their movement. Her computer crews obeyed without question. The 12 patrol ships scattered across a wide area, moving quickly and staying hidden behind asteroids and space debris. The main battle began 30 minutes later. The enemy fleet reached the outer defensive line that Morden had created. Both sides opened fire at maximum range, filling space with bright energy beams and explosive missiles. "Maintain defensive positions," Morden ordered. "Let them come to us. Our technology is superior." For a while, it looked like his plan was working. The enemy ships took heavy damage as they tried to break through the defensive wall. Galactic weapons were indeed superior to whatever the invaders were using. But the enemy had more ships, many more. For every enemy vessel destroyed, 2 more took its place. Slowly, the beautiful defensive formations began to crack under the pressure. "We need to fall back to the second line," called out Cadet Zillikar, who commanded the right flank. She was a tall, thin being with silver skin and large black eyes. "They are breaking through Sector 7. "Negative," Morden replied firmly. "Hold your positions. Civilization does not retreat from barbarians." Hannah watched the battle from her position on the outer edge. Her patrol ships were too far away to help with the main fighting, but she was not watching the main battle. She was watching the enemy supply ships that hung back behind the fighting fleet. The enemy supply lines were spread too thin. Their communication ships were in the wrong positions. Most importantly, they had left their rear completely undefended. They expected all the fighting to happen at the front, just like every other species would expect. But humans did not always fight at the front. "Patrol Group, new orders," Hannah said quietly into her communication system. "We're going to take a little trip, okay?" Her ships began moving, but not toward the main battle. Instead, they moved around the edge of the system, staying hidden and quiet. To anyone watching the main battle, it looked like the human patrol group was retreating in fear. Morden noticed her movement. "Cadet Hannah, return to your position immediately. Okay. We cannot spare any ships for retreat." "I am not retreating," Hannah replied calmly. "I am repositioning for a better angle." "There is no better angle than a strong defensive formation," Morden said firmly. "Follow standard doctrine." Hannah did not reply. She had her ships continue their long journey around the battlefield. It would take time to reach her target, time that Morden and the others might not have. The main battle was going badly. Despite their superior technology, the defensive fleet was being pushed back, planet by planet. The enemy simply had too many ships. Worse, they were adapting to galactic tactics faster than expected. "Sir," called out Cadet Findar, who controlled the left defensive wing. "They are using our own formations against us. Every time we form a new defensive line, they counter it perfectly." Commander Vexstar frowned as he watched from his observation position. This scenario was supposed to be difficult, but winnable. His best students were following perfect galactic military doctrine. So why were they losing? He looked at his displays and noticed something strange. The human students' patrol group was no longer visible on the main battle screen. Where had 12 ships disappeared to? "Cadet Hannah, report your position," he commanded. "Still on patrol, sir," came her calm reply. "Everything is quiet out here." Well, her ships were not in the outer system anymore. They had moved far around the battlefield, traveling through empty space where no one would think to look. Now they were approaching the enemy fleet from behind. The enemy had no scouts watching their rear. They had no defensive ships protecting their supply lines. All their attention was focused on the glorious battle happening at the front of their formation. Hannah looked at her screens and counted enemy supply ships. 15 cargo vessels carrying ammunition and fuel. 3 command ships coordinating communications. 2 repair ships fixing damaged vessels. All of them completely undefended. "Patrol group, prepare for attack," she whispered. "Target the supply ships first, then communications. Move fast and hit hard." Our 12 small ships suddenly accelerated toward the enemy rear. They had given up all pretense of hiding. Now they moved like arrows shot from a bow, fast and deadly, and aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. "What is the human doing?" Morden demanded. He could see her ships on his long-range sensors now. She is breaking formation completely. This is not proper military procedure. Commander Vextar watched with growing interest. He was beginning to understand what the human student was attempting. It was not something any other species would try. It was too risky, too unpredictable, too much like something a predator would. Duhanna's ships reached the enemy supply line and opened fire. The attack was devastating. The enemy supply ships had no shields and no weapons. They were designed to carry cargo, not fight battles. In less than 5 minutes, Hannah's small patrol group had destroyed half the enemy fleet's fuel and ammunition. Alarms began sounding throughout the enemy formation. Ships that had been attacking the main defensive line suddenly found themselves running low on power and weapons. Some had to break off their attacks to protect their remaining supply ships. Impossible, breathed Morden. 12 small ships cannot defeat 500 large ones. What had started as a perfect military formation was now a confused mass of ships trying to figure out what was happening. Half their supply vessels were gone. Communication network was broken. Ships that should have been working together were now flying in different directions. And it was all because of 12 small patrol ships commanded by a quiet human girl. Commander Vextar watched his displays with growing amazement. In 30 years of teaching military strategy, he had never seen anything like this. His best student, Morden, was following every rule in the book. But the human student was writing a completely different book. Skur called out Cadet Rixtel from his command station. This was a large, bear-like being with thick fur and gentle eyes. The enemy is breaking their attack formation. Many ships are turning back to protect their remaining supply vessels. This was exactly what Hannah had hoped for. By attacking the enemy's ability to fight, she had forced them to choose between attacking the planets or protecting themselves. Most commanders would choose protection first, but Hannah was not done yet. Patrol Group, Phase 2, she said quietly. Into her communicator. Target their repair ships. Make sure they cannot fix the damage we caused. Her 12 ships moved like hunting wolves through the enemy formation. They struck fast and disappeared before the enemy could respond. Every few minutes, another explosion lit up space as another support vessel died. Morden's formation was holding steady now that the enemy pressure had decreased. But he was angry and confused. This was not how the simulation was supposed to work. Commander Vextar, Morden called out. The human is not following proper military protocol. She should be court-martialed for abandoning her assigned position. Her assigned position was out of patrol, Commander Vextar replied calmly. She is still patrolling. It's just not where you expected. But she is attacking support vessels, Morden protested. That is not honorable combat. Civilized species fight ship to ship, warrior to warrior. We do not attack defenseless cargo carriers. Commander Vextar looked at the tactical display. The enemy fleet had lost nearly 30% of its fighting ability without losing a single combat ship. It was brilliant, efficient, and completely ruthless. Tell me, Cadet Morden, the commander said. What is the purpose of this exercise? To defend the Harmony Cluster, sir. And how many civilian lives have been saved by Cadet Hannah's unconventional tactics? Morden paused. Key looked at his displays and ran quick calculations. If the battle had continued on its original course, at least 3 planets would have fallen by now. Billions of civilians would be dead or captured. Instead, the enemy fleet was retreating and regrouping. The civilians were safe, but it still felt wrong to him. War should have rules, honor, dignity. It should not be this brutal game of hunt and kill that the human was playing. Hannah's ships appeared on the other side of the enemy formation. They had captured 3 communication relay ships instead of destroying them. Now, strange signals were being sent throughout the enemy fleet. What is she doing now? Asked Cadet Jolanara, a tall, insect-like being with golden wings. Commander Vexstar enhanced the display to see what signals Hannah was sending. His eyes widened when he realized what she had accomplished. The human had not just captured enemy communication ships. She had figured out their command codes. She was sending false orders to different parts of the enemy fleet. Attention! Enemy Squadron 7, came a voice that sounded exactly like an enemy commander. Fall back to defensive position 12. Repeat, fall back immediately. Squadron 7, thinking the order came from their own leaders, began retreating away from the battle. Enemy Squadron 3, you were ordered to advance on position 8. Came another false command. Squadron 3 moved forward, but position 8 was empty space. They found themselves alone and separated from the main fleet. Within minutes, Hannah had the enemy fleet moving in 6 different directions. Units that should have been supporting each other were now scattered across the star system. Some were advancing, some were retreating, and some were just sitting still, waiting for orders that would never come. Okay. This is psychological warfare, whispered Cadet Kellenox, the blue, four-armed student. She is not just attacking their ships, okay? She is attacking their minds. It is brilliant, admitted Cadet Zillicar, despite her obvious discomfort. But it is also terrifying. How did she learn to think like this? Commander Vexter knew the answer to that question. He had read the files on human military history. Earth was not just a dangerous planet because of its wildlife. It was dangerous because everything on it, including humans, had learned to survive by being smarter and more ruthless than their enemies. Human military doctrine was not about honor or fair fighting. It's about winning completely and making sure the enemy could never threaten you again. Cadet Hannah Morton called out over the communications system. What you are doing is not civilized warfare. Please return to proper formation and fight with honor. There was a long pause before Hannah responded. When she did, her voice was still calm and quiet, but there was something in it that made several students shiver. I am not trying to fight with honor, she said. I am trying to make sure those 50 billion civilians get to see another sunrise. Honor is a luxury for people who are not in danger of dying. The words hit the classroom like a cold wind. These students had grown up in peaceful societies where war was theoretical. They learned about battle tactics the same way they learned about ancient history. It was interesting, but not real. But for humans, war was always real. On Earth, everything was always trying to kill you. Plants, animals, weather, disease, and sometimes other humans. You survive by being smarter, faster, and more determined than everything else. The enemy fleet was now completely scattered. Some ships were trying to regroup, but they no longer knew who to trust. Any order might be real, or might be another human trick. Hannah's patrol ships struck again, this time targeting the enemy's fuel tankers. Without fuel, the scattered enemy ships would be stranded in space. They would have to surrender or die slowly as their life support systems failed. Called out Cadet Finder. The enemy is requesting permission to withdraw from the system. Denied, Hannah said immediately, before Morton could respond. K came here to destroy innocent lives. K do not get to leave just because they are losing. But they are surrendering. Morton protested. Civilized beings accept surrender. We do not destroy helpless enemies. They are not helpless, Hannah replied. They still have weapons. They still have ships. If we let them leave, they will attack someone else tomorrow. So maybe people who cannot defend themselves. Commander Vexter realized he was watching something historic. This human student was demonstrating a completely different philosophy of warfare. Not just winning battles, but ending threats permanently. What are you suggesting? He asked carefully. Complete surrender, Hannah said. All weapons powered down. All ships under our control. Crews transferred to prisoner ships. Make sure they never hurt anyone again. The classroom fell silent. This level of total victory was something most species never even considered. They fought until one side retreated. Then both sides went home to try again later. But humans did not fight that way. When humans went to war, they fought until the threat was completely eliminated. The enemy fleet is attempting to escape the system, reported Cadet Rixtel. Many ships are breaking away from the main formation. Let them run, Morden ordered. We have defended the civilians. Our job is done. No, Hannah said firmly. Our job is to make sure this never happens again. Her 12 patrol ships moved to intercept the fleeing enemy vessels. They were faster than the larger enemy ships and could easily catch them. But they were also heavily outnumbered. Cadet Hannah, you could not engage 500 ships with 12 patrol vessels, Commander Vexter warned. That is suicide. I'm not engaging 500 ships, Hannah replied calmly. I am engaging 12 groups of confused, frightened enemies who do not know how to work together anymore. She was right. The enemy fleet was no longer a fleet. It was a collection of individual ships with no coordination, no communication, and no clear leadership. Patrol group, wolf pack formation, Hannah ordered. Hunt the stragglers first. Force them back toward the main group. Make them crowd together where they cannot maneuver. Her ships began a systematic pursuit of the fleeing enemy vessels. They did not try to destroy every ship. Instead, they used fear and confusion to drive the enemy ships into a tight cluster where they got in each other's way. It was like watching a pack of wolves herd sheep. The enemy ships, panicked and disorganized, began crashing into each other as they tried to escape. Some collided and exploded. Others became tangled together and could not move. Within an hour, the entire enemy fleet was either destroyed, captured, or helplessly trapped in a cluster of damaged ships. Simulation complete, announced Commander Vextar. Total victory for the defending forces. Classroom displays showed the final results. Enemy fleet completely eliminated. Defending fleet casualties, less than 5%. Civilian casualties, 0. All accomplished by one human girl with 12 old patrol ships. The alien students stared at Hannah with a mixture of awe and fear. They had just learned something that would change their understanding of warfare forever. The classroom was completely silent for almost a full minute. Every alien student stared at their displays in shock. The numbers did not make sense to them. How could 12 small ships defeat 500 large ones? How could one human girl accomplish what entire fleets had failed to do in real wars? Commander Vexter looked at his own command display 3 times to make sure the simulation had not malfunctioned. But the results were clear. The enemy fleet was gone. Not retreated. Not damaged. Gone. Cadet Hannah, he said slowly. Please explain your tactics to the class. Hannah stood up from her command station. She looked exactly the same as she had that morning. Calm, quiet, unremarkable. But now, every eye in the room followed her with a mixture of respect and fear. Commander, may I use the main display? She asked politely. Of course. It's a star map. Above their heads, changed to show a replay of the entire battle. Hannah walked to the front of the classroom, her small figure dwarfed by the huge alien students around her. The enemy made 3 critical mistakes, she began. Her voice was still soft, but now everyone listened to every word. First, they assumed we would fight the same way they would fight. Second, they protected their weapons, but not their ability to use those weapons. Third, they thought like a single unit instead of thinking like individuals. She pointed to the display, which showed the enemy fleet's original formation. Look at their supply lines, she said. Perfect for supporting a long battle against a defensive enemy, but terrible for protecting against fast attackers who ignored the main fight. Cadet Morden raised his hand. But attacking supply ships is not honorable combat, he said. Civilized species fight warrior against warrior. Why Hannah asked simply. The question confused Morden, "'Cause that is how civilized beings behave. We have rules. Honor codes. We do not attack the defenseless." "What about the 50 billion civilians in the Harmony Cluster?" Hannah asked. "Are they not defenseless? Did the enemy worry about honor when they came to destroy peaceful worlds?" Morden had no answer for that. Hannah turned back to the display. The enemy came here to commit genocide, to kill billions of innocent people who had done nothing wrong. In that situation, honor becomes a weakness that helps the enemy succeed. She manipulated the display to show her ship's movement around the battlefield. "I did not try to fight 500 ships," she continued. "I tried to make it impossible for 500 ships to fight effectively. Once they could not communicate or resupply, they were no longer a fleet. They were just individual ships with individual fears." Commander Vexstar leaned forward in his chair. K was beginning to understand something important about human military. "Thinking you used their own psychology against them," he said. "Yes, sir," Hannah nodded. "Most species in the galaxy have been peaceful for thousands of years. They fight wars like they solve other problems, with logic, planning, and cooperation. But when you break their ability to cooperate, they panic." "That is a terrifying thought," whispered Cadet Slukar. "It should be," Hannah replied. War is terrifying. That is why most humans try to avoid it. But when we must fight, we fight to end the threat completely." The display now showed the false communications that Hannah had sent to confuse the enemy fleet. "How did you decode their command signals so quickly?" asked Cadet Jolinara. "Did not decode them," Hannah said. "I recorded them during the battle and played them back with small changes. Most military communication follows predictable patterns. Move to position A, attack target B, retreat 2.C. I just changed the letters." Several students looked sick. They were realizing how easy it would be for someone to use the same tactics against their own fleets. "But the most important part," Hannah continued, "was understanding what the enemy really feared." "Which was what?" Commander Vexstar asked. "Being alone." Hannah changed the display to show the final phase of the battle when her ships had herded the fleeing enemies into a tight cluster. "Every species in this galaxy evolved in groups," she explained. "Packs, flocks, herds. When you separate them from their group, they become desperate to get back to safety. They stop thinking clearly. They make mistakes, like running into each other," observed Cadet Rixtel. "Exactly. I did not need to destroy their ships. I just needed to make them destroy themselves." The classroom fell silent again as the students absorbed this lesson. We're learning that warfare was not just about weapons and tactics. It was about understanding how different species thought and felt. Commander Vexstar stood up and walked to the front of the room. He had been teaching military strategy for 30 years, but he felt like a student again. "Cadet Hannah," he said, "formally, in all my years of instruction, I have never seen such a complete victory achieved with such limited resources. Your tactics were brilliant, efficient, and absolutely ruthless." "Thank you, sir. I have one question," the commander continued. "Could you have achieved the same result with less destruction? Could you have forced the enemy to surrender without eliminating their entire fleet?" Hannah considered this carefully. Before answering, "Yes, sir. I probably could have, but that would have been a mistake." "Why?" "Because they would try again. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but eventually they would come back. Next time they would be ready for my tricks. Next time they might succeed in destroying those 50 billion innocent lives." She looked around the classroom at all the alien faces watching her. "On Earth, we have a saying. If you must fight, fight once and win completely. Do not give your enemy a chance to learn from their mistakes and hurt you later." Cadet Kalonix raised his hand nervously. "Are all humans like you? Do they all think about war this way?" Most humans hope they never have to think about war at all, Hannah replied. We prefer peace. But yes, when we must fight, we all think this way. It is how we survived on a world where everything was trying to kill us. Commander Vextar made notes on his tablet. This human student had just given him enough material for an entirely new course on military psychology. What other tactics do humans use? Asked Cadet Findar. Hannah was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was even softer than before. We study our enemies until we know them better than they know themselves. We find what they love most and what they fear most. We use both against them. We attack when they expect peace and offer peace when they expect attack. We make them fight the battle we choose, not the battle they want. That sounds like the behavior of predators, said Morton, clearly disturbed. Yes, Hannah agreed simply. That is exactly what it is. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. These students were beginning to understand what it really meant that humans had evolved as hunters on a death world. But we only become predators when we must, Hannah added quickly. Most of the time, humans are peaceful. We prefer to build things instead of destroying them. We prefer to save lives instead of taking them. Then why are you so good at war? Asked Silikar. 'Cause being good at war is the best way to avoid having wars, Hannah explained. When your enemies know that fighting you will cost them everything, they usually choose not to fight at all. Commander Vextar understood now why the Galactic Council had been nervous about admitting humans to the Academy. It was not because humans were too primitive for advanced military training. It was because they were too advanced. Class dismissed, he announced. We will discuss the implications of today's lesson tomorrow. The students began gathering their things and leaving, but most of them kept glancing back at Hannah as if they were seeing her for the first time. As the room emptied, Commander Vextar approached her command station. Cadet Hannah, he said quietly, I need to ask you something important. Do you enjoy warfare? Do you like causing destruction? Hannah looked up at him with her calm brown eyes. For the first time since he had known her, she looked sad. Oh, sir, she said softly. I hate it. Every human does. War is terrible and ugly and wrong. But sometimes terrible things happen to good people, and someone has to stop it. You believe humans are the ones who should stop it. Okay? I believe humans are the ones who can stop it, she corrected. Whether we should or not is a question for people much smarter than me. Commander Vextar nodded slowly. He was beginning to realize that humanity's greatest weapon was not their ruthlessness or their cleverness. It was their reluctant willingness to do what needed to be done, even when it hurt them to do it. One more question, he said. What happens now? What happens when the rest of the galaxy learns what human military thinking can accomplish? Hannah stood up and gathered her things. She looked very young and very tired. I hope they learn that it is much better to be our friends than our enemies, she said simply. Then she walked out of the classroom, leaving Commander Vextar alone with his thoughts and the sobering realization that warfare in the galaxy had just changed forever. 3 days later, Admiral Thelanara arrived at the Galactic Naval Academy. She was the highest-ranking officer in the entire Galactic Defense Force, by being so old and wise that some species considered her a living legend. Material form seemed to glow with its own light as she floated through the Academy corridors. Commander Vextar met her at the entrance to his classroom. He had requested this meeting immediately after Hannah's simulation, knowing that what had happened would change everything. Show me, Admiral Thelanara said without any greeting. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Commander Vextar activated the classroom displays. The replay of Hannah's battle began, showing every detail of how 12 small ships had destroyed an entire enemy fleet. Admiral Thelanara watched in complete silence. Her ancient eyes tracked every movement, every decision, every tactical choice that the human student had made. When the replay ended, she floated motionless for several minutes. "This changes everything," she finally said, double quotes, "Yes, Admiral. That is why I called you." Where is the human student now? In her dormitory, studying for tomorrow's engineering exam. Admiral Thelanara almost smiled. Of course, the human would be studying for a regular test after completely revolutionizing military strategy. Bring her here. Summon the other students from that simulation. They need to understand what they witnessed. 20 minutes later, the classroom was full again. All the students who had participated in the battle simulation sat at their stations, looking nervous and excited. They had heard that the Admiral herself had come to see them. Hannah entered last, walking quietly to her usual seat in the back row. She looked exactly the same as always, small, calm, unremarkable. But now every other student watched her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Admiral Thelanara floated at the front of the classroom, her ethereal form casting soft shadows on the walls. 3 days ago, she began. Something happened in this room that has never happened before in the history of galactic warfare. A single student, commanding the weakest force in the simulation, achieved a victory so complete that our military analysts are still trying to understand how it was possible. She gestured toward Hannah, who looked uncomfortable with the attention. "Cadet Lee, Hannah, please stand." Hannah stood up slowly, her hands clasped behind her back. "Cadet Hannah, do you understand the implications of what you accomplished?" "I believe so, Admiral. Explain." Hannah was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I showed that human military thinking is very different from galactic military thinking. This might change how the Defense Force operates. This might also make other species more afraid of humans than they already are." "And how do you feel about that?" "Worried, Admiral. Fear makes people do stupid things. If other species become too afraid of humans, they might try to hurt us before we hurt them." Admiral Thelanara nodded approvingly. The human student understood the political consequences of her actions, not just the military ones. "What would you recommend we do about this situation?" All eyes turned to Hannah. She was just a student, barely 19 years old, but everyone in the room was waiting to hear what she would say. "Teach them," Hannah said simply. "Teach them what?" "Teach them that human military skills are not a threat to peaceful species. Teach them that we use these abilities to protect innocent people, not to conquer or destroy. Show them that the galaxy is safer with humans helping to defend it." Cadet Morden raised his hand hesitantly. "Admiral, may I ask a question?" "Of course." "Will the Defense Force adopt human tactical methods? Will we all be expected to fight like ... like predators?" Admiral Thelanara looked at Hannah before answering. "What do you think, Cadet Hannah? Should we teach your methods to other species?" Hannah considered this very carefully. She understood that her answer might affect billions of lives across the galaxy. "Some methods, yes," she said finally. "Basic principles like protecting supply lines, using psychology against enemies, and thinking creatively about tactics. These things could help everyone defend themselves better." He and the other methods, Admiral Thelanara prompted. "The darker methods should probably stay with humans," Hannah said quietly. "Most species are not mentally prepared for total warfare. It would change them in ways they might not like." "You mean it would make them more like humans?" As to Cadet Slucker, it might make them more like humans at war, Hannah corrected. "And humans at war are not the same as humans at peace. War changes us. It brings out parts of our nature that we prefer to keep hidden." Commander Vextar spoke up. "Admiral, I recommend that we create a new advanced course. Human strategic thinking. Optional enrollment only for students who specifically want to learn these methods." "Who would teach such a course?" Admiral Thelanara asked. "I could try." Hannah said reluctantly, but I am still a student myself. Maybe we should ask for volunteer instructors from Earth's Defense Force. Admiral Thelanara made notes on her personal tablet. I will discuss this with the Galactic Council. In the meantime, I want to address all of you. She looked around the classroom at the alien students who had witnessed Hannah's victory. What you saw here was not just superior tactics. You saw completely different philosophy of warfare. A philosophy born from millions of years of evolution on one of the most dangerous planets in known space. The students listened intently. Humans do not fight for glory or honor or conquest. They fight for survival. This makes them more dangerous than any other species, but it also makes them more trustworthy. A species that fights only when it must is a species that truly values peace. Cadet Findar raised his hand. Admiral, are you saying that humans will become the military leaders of the galaxy? I am saying that humans will become the military teachers of the galaxy, Admiral Thelanara replied. They will show us how to protect what we love without becoming what we hate. She turned to Hannah again. Cadet Hannah, I have a question that I must ask officially. If the Galactic Council requested Earth's help in defending against a major threat, would humanity respond? Yes, Admiral, Hannah answered without hesitation. But we would want to command our own forces. We would not want to be commanded by people who do not understand how we fight. And if the Council gave humans that level of authority, then we would protect every peaceful world in the galaxy as if it were Earth itself. Admiral Thelanara smiled, an expression of light that filled the entire room with warmth. That is exactly what I hoped you would say. She floated toward the classroom door, then paused and looked back. Students, you have been privileged to witness history. Someday, you will tell your children about the day you learned that the galaxy's most dangerous predators had chosen to become its most devoted guardians. After the Admiral left, the classroom remained quiet for a long time. Finally, Cadet Morden stood up and walked over to Hannah's seat. I owe you an apology, he said formally. I called your methods uncivilized, but I understand now that you are more civilized than any of us. You were willing to carry the burden of violence so that innocent people could remain innocent. Other students began standing and approaching Hannah. One by one, they thanked her for showing them what real protection looked like. Hannah accepted their thanks gracefully, but she looked tired and sad. Commander Vexter noticed her expression. What troubles you, Cadet Hannah? I just hope this is the right choice, she said quietly. Once the galaxy learns what humans can do in war, there is no going back. We will always be the ones people call when something terrible happens. We will always be the ones who have to make the hard choices. Is that such a bad thing? Asked Cadet Rixdell gently. Hannah looked around the room at all the alien faces, watching her with respect and gratitude. No, she said finally. I suppose it is not. Someone has to be willing to do what others cannot do. Someone has to be strong enough to protect the weak and wise enough to know when to stop. And you believe humans can be both strong and wise? Commander Vexter asked. I believe we can try, Hannah replied. And I believe that trying is what makes us human. As the students filed out of the classroom, Hannah remained in her seat for a few extra moments. She thought about her brother Jimin back on Earth, and about the message she would send him tonight. She would tell him that humanity had just become the official guardians of galactic peace. She would tell him that Earth's children would now be scattered across the stars, teaching other species how to protect themselves and fighting battles that others could not win. She would tell him that being from a Death's world was no longer just a burden they carried. It was a gift they gave to the galaxy. The quiet girl from Earth stood up, gathered her things, and walked out to face a future where humans would no longer sit quietly in the back row. They would stand at the front, ready to defend anyone who needed defending, for as long as the stars continue to shine.